All right, so you guys really threw us a curveball this time, gotta say.
Yeah,
This blog post, Mama's Boy, from the Ungoniers line, Larry Dean, right?
that's the one.
This whole, like, contradiction he starts with just kind of grabs you.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Talking about, 80% high school graduation rate.
80%, right?
Sounds pretty good on paper.
Yeah.
U.S. Education Department's numbers, even.
You'd think, like, hey, we're doing something right, and then bam.
Not so fast.
Less than half of those kids can actually read or do math at a proficient level.
It's like, whoa, hold on a minute. What's going on here?
Age disconnect, right? So for this deep dive, what we really want to do, and this is what you guys asked for, is get into Larry's head a little bit. Like what does he think is going on? And he seems really focused on parents.
Yeah, and how society's kind of changed, too.
Right, exactly. This whole shift. And so I guess right off the bat, what surprised you most about his take?
Well, he doesn't, jump to some easy answer. He's like, look, there are teacher problems, sure, and society's got its issues, and yeah, parents, we're part of this, too.
He's owning it a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just pointing fingers.
Yeah.
I mean, he even mentions that whole thing you hear sometimes about, get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the magic solution.
Not going to fix everything, he says.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's like he's saying, okay, all those things matter, but let's really zoom in on this parent thing.
Yeah, like that's where the real meat is for him.
And that's where it gets personal too, right?
Yeah, that's what I found so interesting. He's not, preaching from some ivory tower. He's looking in the mirror too.
Right.
Saying, hey, my generation, we messed up some stuff too.
Mhm.
Maybe not enough involvement. Maybe we expected too much. Maybe we're just too damn busy.
Life got in the way.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes it relatable. We've all been there.
So he hones in on this thing, this phrase almost being there, which sounds almost, I don't know, almost too simple.
You're like, okay, what does that even mean?
Right. But he's like, this has been missing big time since, the awakening of the 60s.
Yeah, a lot changed back then for sure.
Huge societal shifts, yeah. So what do you think he's getting at with that being there thing? Like it's more than just physically being in the house, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to see what he means, you got to look at his mom.
Mama's Boy, the title of the piece.
Exactly, yeah. He describes her, and on paper, you might think, well, she wasn't the most, academically driven parent. No high school diploma, didn't help with homework, wasn't, at every school event.
But that's where it gets interesting, right?
Totally.
Because he's saying she gave him something way more important.
Stagnation, yeah.
How to behave, how to be respectful, this sense of right and wrong, like the core stuff.
It's like she built him up from the inside.
And he talks about this feeling of oneness with her,
That connection, yeah.
which gave him this confidence, this drive.
Like he could take on the world.
Yeah, and there's this great line he says, although she didn't know much about what I was doing, she taught me how to do it.
I love that line.
Right? Like, it's not about knowing the specific subject matter.
It's about, the mindset, the attitude, the work ethic. Those things get passed down.
That's what she gave him.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about our listeners, right? They're trying to do their best as parents.
Yeah.
What are the things beyond just physically being there
Yeah.
that they can take away from Larry's experience?
Right. Because he does connect this back to how society's expectations have changed.
Oh, for sure.
He points out that, back then, his mom, even though she might have had her own dreams, her main gig was being a stay-at-home mom.
It was a different time, yeah.
It was just kind of what was expected,
Right. The world kind of said, this is what moms do.
And then he brings up Hillary Clinton, it takes a village, that whole thing.
1996. Big speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think about it, like, that's about community support, right?
Helping each other out, yeah.
But Larry's kind of saying, wait a minute, have we gone too far with that?
Like, we're leaning on the village too much.
And maybe in doing that, we're actually taking away some of our kids' responsibility.
Letting them off the hook a little.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold statement, I think.
It is, yeah. He's going against the grain there.
And then he brings it back to his own life again.
Personal connection, yeah.
He says his mom, she felt like the village didn't do much for her, so she raised him with that same idea.
You're on your own, kid.
Kind of, yeah. And so when he messed up,
When things went wrong, yeah.
it wasn't like he could blame, I don't know, the school system or the government.
It's the village's fault.
Right. It was like, nope, that's on you and your parents.
Not to own it.
And he thinks that was actually a good thing.
Build character.
Made him accountable.
Interesting, right. Like, sometimes not having that safety net can actually make you stronger.
Mm. And he's not saying we need to go back to the old days, like completely.
He gets that things have changed, and that's okay.
He even says, we're probably better off overall.
Progress has been made.
But, and this is key, he says there's a trade-off.
There's always a trade-off, yeah.
And that's where he ends with this line that's so simple, but it just hits you.
What's the line?
He says, one of the consequences is that there are now fewer mama's boys.
Wow.
It's like, he's not saying it's a bad thing necessarily, but it's something lost,
It makes you think, like, maybe in all this focus on test scores and graduation rates,
Yeah.
we've forgotten about some of the deeper stuff.
Character, resilience.
The things you can't measure on a standardized test.
Right. So, that's Larry's big takeaway, right? This idea that maybe, just maybe, this kind of old school, just being there kind of parenting.
Yeah, being present, teaching those core values.
Right. Maybe that was more important than we realized.
And that maybe it's faded a bit since, the 60s and all that change.
Yeah, and it's not like a simple solution, but it's something to think about.
Especially for our listeners, right? They're wrestling with these issues, seeing their kids go through school.
Exactly, and this whole gap Larry's talking about between, graduation rates and actual skills.
Yeah, that's something a lot of folks have written in about, worried about.
So it's like, what do we do? How do we raise kids who are not just, checking boxes?
Yeah, but actually thriving,
Confident, responsible.
ready for the world.
Exactly. So, big picture, right? Thinking about Larry's story, what do you think it tells us about how society shapes the way we parent?
A huge question, yeah. Are we putting too much pressure on schools, on the village, to do what maybe families used to handle?
Or are we swinging too far the other way, Like helicopter parenting, over-involved, doing everything for our kids.
Right, and are they missing out on that sense of agency, that feeling that they can actually control their own lives?
It's a tricky balance, right? And Larry's story doesn't give us all the answers, but it sure makes you think.
It's a starting point, yeah. Gets the conversation going.
Exactly. So for you guys listening, think about that. What's your version of being there? What are the things maybe beyond academics that you're passing down to your kids? What makes them feel confident, responsible, ready to face whatever comes their way? It's a question worth asking ourselves, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for bringing this one to our attention, folks. It really makes you think.
Definitely a lot to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.